Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It's Sheep Fragger here with a podcast for the first time in ages. As everyone knows, Gears of War is my game. I was a professional at it. I loved it. Some of the best gaming times I've ever had in my life has been on those games. So, of course, when a new one gets announced, we are definitely going to cover it. I know there's been a bit of a hiatus on the podcast. I also haven't streamed as much. I've had some IRL things going on and trying to sort out, so that's why I haven't been doing either of those things. I've got it to a point where I can normalize a lot of the bits with the podcast, so it makes editing them a lot easier. What I'm going to do is make this podcast episode 1 and start again, and we're going to go on from there. Before we get into Gears 6, I just want to speak a bit about the Xbox Showcase in general. If you don't know, the Xbox Showcase was a couple of days ago. Not gonna lie, it was pretty epic. Xbox has a lot of games in the works that are coming out very soon that look friggin' epic. The Indiana Jones game legit just looks like playing through an Indiana Jones film, which I feel like is exactly what it should look like, right? If you haven't seen that defo, check out the trailer. The other game that I'm very much looking forward to is Stalker 2. I didn't ever play the first one. It was quite a niche game. I don't actually know if it was just on PC first, to be honest, and didn't actually come to console anyway. But Stalker 2 looks incredible. There was a little bit of a worry that the graphics were downgraded because the graphics that they showed in the first trailer versus the graphics they showed in the previous trailer were a lot worse. But it seems like that's not the case. The gameplay looks incredible. The gunplay looks incredible. And I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to do an extraction shooter as their multiplayer component. And if they don't, they would be silly. But based on how the inventory system works, I definitely feel like once you've completed the single player, or even if you don't want to play the single player, the multiplayer component of Stalker 2 is going to be an extraction-based shooter. Just looking at how the inventory system works and just looking at the overall setting of the game, you know, having a Tarkov on console and Stalker 2 being that seems like it'd be the perfect way to go, especially the setting and everything. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, well, actually, no, there's one more game, Avowed. The people who made Fallout New Vegas have made basically their own Skyrim, and it looks epic, so that's another game that I was looking forward to. But the final game I want to speak about before we jump into Gears of War is Black Ops 6. Now, I think if you've listened to any of the previous podcasts, even though officially this will be episode 1, you will know how much I love Call of Duty but despise skill-based matchmaking. So I may talk about skill-based matchmaking when I talk about Gears of War in a minute, but I won't talk about that when I'm talking about Black Ops now. But they've seemed to make some epic decisions. So they've brought back the traditional prestige system, which is available day 1, which is amazing. The problem with how the prestige system worked in Call of Duty previously was obviously you got from level 0 to level 50 or whatever it was, and then there was no more XP and nothing you could do, so the game felt stagnant until they released the first season, and then you can get to your, you know, level 100, 150, whatever it was, and it obviously reset with every new season. The problem with that is, if you're, you know, anyone like me, you probably get to prestige the first, you know, 50 levels within, you know, the first day of playing probably. And once you hit that, it's kind of like, oh, well, there's nothing else to do now, so what's the point in playing? And although the quality of the games are good, the games are not fun because of skill-based matchmaking. So if the game's not fun, and I have nothing to grind for, i.e. getting higher prestiges, then there's legitimately no point in continuing playing the game. So I'm very glad they changed that. I'd be even more happy if they removed skill-based matchmaking, because every game feels like I'm playing in a $1 million tournament. You have to try super hard, and it's not a fun experience, you know? Not a fun experience at all. But we'll get back into skill-based matchmaking when I jump into Call of Gears of War even in a second. But yeah, that game looks awesome, and it's going to be free on Game Pass day 1. So if you're on Xbox, you save yourself, you know, 60 quid or whatever it is. So it's pretty epic. So now we get into the main meal of the podcast, which is Gears of War 6. So for those who don't know, I'm sure I haven't ever mentioned it ever in all of my bios and stuff like that. I was previously a professional Gears of War player. Gears of War is probably my favorite multiplayer game. Gears of War 1 certainly. There's a couple you could throw in there like SOCOM 2, and obviously you got a couple of the CODs, but Gears of War is the game that holds a special place in my heart. I think, before going into the trailer and stuff like that was in the showcase, I'm trying to find a way to articulate how much Gears of War means to me as a franchise. And I know I'm not the only one. If you look at some of the reaction videos to the trailer, you see a lot of grown men crying at the fact that the new Gears of War is coming out. There's only 2 times you see grown men cry. When When I See You Again comes on at the end of Fast and Furious, and when a new Gears of War is released, apparently. But I think most people will have something in their life that they will feel like this about, and the best way I can articulate what Gears of War means to me is that if I was, found out to be, if I found out I was going to be terminally ill tomorrow, touch wood, the first thing I would think about was, oh my god, I'd want my Make-A-Wish to be able to play the new Gears of War before I die. And to some people that may sound silly, but that's just how much the game means to me. And I think most people would have something in their life that they feel like that about. I'm sure I read some stories where when the Avengers movies came out, there's people that were showing it early because, that was the case when the final Avengers was coming out. You yourself may feel that about a band that you love or a film that you love or something like that. So I think that's something that most people can resonate with in some way, shape, or form. So it's where we had in the time of my life, which was very difficult for me when I was younger, which a lot of people probably didn't know was happening or was that I was going through. Gears of War kind of filled a massive void that if I didn't have that, my life would have been very difficult. And on top of that, it was an incredible game. You had incredible times with your mates. You go to school, come home, first thing we do, stick on Gears of War and play for another 4 hours and just repeat that for like however many years. As I said at the start, some of the best gaming times are from that game, and I'm sure that's something that most people can or have experience with, their own games that they love. So yeah, that's what the game means to me. It's a very big place in my heart. So, I was sitting there watching the Xbox showcase in its entirety, waiting for the Gears trailer, and it didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come. I was like, oh no, are they not going to show it? And then it came. So, my feelings about Gears of War E-Day. First and foremost, what it feels like is they've massively listened to the fans. And this sounds ridiculous to say, but I noticed that a lot more games companies are finally listening to the fans. It's like for a while, a lot of the games companies thought they knew better than the fans. They're actually paying the money to play these games. They're like, no, that's not how we want it. So we're going to do it like this. It's okay. And then the game doesn't do very well. It gets slammed in the reviews. And then they're like, why did no one like it? They're like, because this is what we told you wanted and you completely ignored it. So it feels like Gears of War very much listened to the fans, and we get to revisit characters in a way that we haven't experienced them before, but we also get to see them on our screens again, and almost in the way we remember when we first started playing Gears of War. So you get that nostalgia. For those who don't know or didn't watch the showcase, the new Gears of War is called Gears of War E-Day, and that stands for Emergence Day. And basically, Emergence Day is the day that all of the bad guys from Gears of War came up from underneath the ground on the planet that everyone in Gears of War lives on, basically, which is called Sera, which is basically Earth. And the locusts have been underneath the crust for however many years, building an army until they rise up and take over, or try to take over Earth, basically. And that's basically the setting for this game. It's E-Day when it all comes out. And we get to see how the original characters, Marcus and Dom, and I hope some other characters in the franchise, how they form their brotherhood, and what happened during E-Day. And it feels like Gears of War's going back to its roots. Now, I really enjoyed Gears of War 5. I think Gears of War 5 is probably, purely in terms of multiplayer experience, the best Gears of War since Gears of War 1, to be perfectly honest. I didn't like Gears of War 2 at all in terms of how it played. Going back to its roots, meaning the game's looks like it's gonna be dark, it's gonna be gritty, it's almost gonna be slightly horror-like, which is what the original original Gears of War was. And it's basically everything the fans wanted the game to go back to. And that's a lot of the sentiment that I found from people, is that they're happy that they get to re-experience Gears of War in the way that they want again. And on top of that, people who are new to the franchise that maybe only played Gears of War 5 as it was on Game Pass may not know sort of the origin. So for the new fans of the game to get to experience that as well is something that I'm looking forward to seeing how different people react. What most people, if you haven't played Gears of War and you've seen me play it online and you've seen other people play it online, and I'll get into this in slightly more detail in a bit, but the multiplayer aspect of the game plays nothing like the single player aspect of the game. The single player aspect of the game has massive set pieces, huge monsters that you fight, and all stuff like that. And the campaign is normally incredible, and it's normally co-op as well. And that's one of the things we're going to jump into in a second, actually, because now you know the setting. I basically want to tell you exactly what I personally, as someone that's been playing Gears of War for like near enough 20 years at this point, what I would want from a Gears of War. And I'm not saying I'm right, but a lot of the community has the similar sentiment as I do. So going into that, going back into the campaign, what I've heard, although I don't think it's true, is that the campaign's going to be open world. And I think people are assuming that because aspects of the Gears of War 5 campaign were slightly open world. Now, whilst certain aspects may be okay for being open world, one of the problems with open world games is that you can't curate. Well, the difference between open world games and linear games is obviously open world, you can do things like how you want to, where you want to, even if it takes you on a certain path. Whereas a completely linear game, you can curate the player's experience down to every single last pixel, every last second, every piece of music that plays at a specific time, and it allows you to have these really impactful story beats and these incredible set pieces that you just cannot get in an open world game, and they won't have the same impact. So I really would like the game to be linear, essentially. Obviously open world has its benefits, but as I said, it detaches from curating the exceptional narrative and storyline and the set pieces that the games will have, the games have had in the past. And I'm pretty confident it's going to be linear. Of course, I'd love the campaign to be co-op. How many players co-op? I don't know what they would do there, but it would be awesome if it was up to 4 players and play the game through from start to finish. Obviously, the traditional Gears of War was 2, but either way, it's I'm sure it's going to be at least 2 people can do co-op campaign. I guess now we basically go on to multiplayer, and this is the big one for me. I didn't actually play through Gears 5's campaign. I went straight to playing multiplayer and basically watched my mate White Saber play through the campaign. It looked epic, so I will need to go back and play through it before the new Gears comes out, because I want to get it done, and I know I probably will never go back and actually go through the campaign to experience it. So that is something I definitely want to do. But so multiplayer, this is my wheelhouse. If they, how on the new Xbox it keeps track, you've played this game for X amount of days. If they kept track of how long I played Gears of War 1 back in the day, I would probably be sick at the amount of days that I had played that game. Honestly, horrendous. A horrendous amount of time, but all enjoyable, all fun. And like you say, when you're doing, I'm pretty confident one summer, me, Saber, and 2 of our other friends essentially went the whole summer without losing a single round on Gears of War, right? And we used to kill each other at the start of the game. So we'd kill each other at the start of the game, and then whoever won the fight would then go and kill the other 4 members of the team, and we still didn't even lose a round all summer. Like the levels were unbelievable. Pretty much all the people I play with definitely could have been very very good players on the professional scene of Gears of War back in the day. But yeah, so with multiplayer, I think the first thing I want to say, and it's going to sound like maybe maybe a silly point, but in the current sort of political and gaming climate, I think it's quite important, as Gears of War has always been, very gory, very bloody, destroying people with the shotgun into like 15 different pieces has always been amazing. But on top of that, what I really like about Gears of War is like there's fun competitive toxicity there that I'd love to still be there. So what do I mean by that? Especially for those who haven't played it, because I know if you're coming from my stream, etc., you may not have played Gears of War. It's like you get for example, after you kill someone, you can make something appear on their screen, and something could appear on their screen like it'll say "get wrecked" or "F you." Or like sometimes you'll get random voice dialogue from the characters, which will just scream like "too easy," or suck. I'm sure one of the anyone that has played Gears of War, I'm sure one of the locusts, right, says "suck my D" after it kills someone sometimes. And if you do play Gears of War, in the comments, can you write below if you've heard that as well? Because I'm sure after I've played as a locust and killed someone, it laughs and says "suck my D." So, I'm sure that happened. But anyway, I in the current political landscape of gaming and the world at the moment, I think we at risk of losing that fun toxicity. And I very much would like that to stay in Gears of War. And I think it will. I think if Gears of War had it, I know even since Gears of War 5, which came out 5 years ago, the world's changed. But I definitely think like that needs to stay. And it needs to be in the game, and I think that the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction. You got my generation that grew up watching South Park and have a no holds barred sort of approach to life and comedy. If you, I don't want to start a bloody class warfare or something, but if you've grown up in a council estate like we have. It's like you almost for fun you'd have slagging matches, and your mum your mum jokes and all of that stuff, and you say the most like horrendous stuff to each other, and then you'd laugh about it, and then you'd be you come in to play football tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? And it gave you a thick skin, but B, when you live in these places and life's difficult as it is, words can't words aren't the worst thing that's gonna happen. It's funny. So I think my generation, like I said, grew up on South Park. The generation, what do you call them, millennials? I don't even know what generation I am at this point. I was born in 92. But, yeah, the generation after me seem to be the ones that are very sensitive and, you can't say that, you can't joke about that. And I think that's what has contributed to some of the political stuff that's been going on with you can't say certain jokes and stuff like that. But they went so far left field that the generation after that has almost completely rejected a lot of that wokeness. So the generation coming up has sort of like, no, I've been stifled to what I can say for so long. I'm saying whatever I like. Jokes are jokes. Deal with it. But I think the pendulum is swinging back in the other way. So, I definitely think that it's expected that there's going to be the toxicity in the multiplayer. And B, the way the world's shifting, I think that it's not risky for them to do it. So for sure, I think it'll be included. The second thing that and this is actually maybe the most important thing for the game, and the longevity of the game and the longevity for Gears of War as a whole franchise. So one of the again, and we're going to go a little bit deep here. Game Pass has many, many benefits, right? Many, many benefits of, you get access to a whole bunch of games, whole high quality games for one price, and one monthly subscription. But what that does do, it makes games feel disposable, and in a world where people don't have tons of concentration, we live in the Snapchat age, which, it's told people to have a 3-second attention span and all of that other stuff. When you have the franchises and games that A have been around for 20 years and you've got people that are very familiar with the mechanics, and B has very difficult mechanics to get to grips with and learn. One of the issues with Game Pass is the fact that players aren't actually buying the game, but they're getting the game through Game Pass, means that the game feels disposable. So if you play a game that is quite difficult to play, especially in the multiplayer, and it feels like you're not learning the game quick enough, what most people are going to do, I fear, is they're going to basically bow out of that game after maybe playing 2 or 3 times. They're just going to go, nope. And because they didn't pay for it, there's not that impotence to say, right, I'm going to get my money's worth and I'm going to play this game until I do get it. Do you know what I mean? That's I think, one of the problems with Game Pass, and that is something that Xbox really has to overcome with some of their key franchises, Gears of War being one of them. And I think this is a massive issue for Gears of War because for 2 reasons. For one, the game mechanics of Gears of War are very difficult to get to grips with if you've never played it before. Because every battle is like a mini war, essentially. You got to anticipate what the other people are going to do. You got to learn how to wall bounce at the same time as shooting a shotgun. You got to remember that the shotgun comes out of the gun and not the center of the screen, which is, different for a lot of the games. So you have to learn that. And all of these things keep stacking up. You have to learn, the importance of power weapons. And that was what I remember playing with Jingles and wondering some of the BWJs with White Saber again. He's a streamer. I will link him in the description below. One of my friends for 20 odd years. Played tens of thousands of hours of Gears of War together. And it was awesome playing with them because they hadn't played Gears of War a ton. And when the penny dropped about, controlling the power weapons, and they were like, oh, this is... And it was like, yeah. And it was like awesome to see that. And I love playing with people that not necessarily play a ton of Gears of War and experiencing that with them for the first time. But anyway, back to what I was saying is that, all of these mechanics are quite difficult to learn. And so that's the first issue with Gears of War. And the second issue is because these mechanics are quite difficult to learn. The second issue is the mechanics are very difficult to learn, but what Gears of War's issue is that you don't get with any other game, even if the mechanics are difficult, is that the multiplayer is a completely different game to the single player. So the single player does not prepare people for multiplayer because you do not use the same game mechanics. The single player game is mostly, for those who don't know, the 2 main weapons used is your Lancer, which is your machine gun, and your shotgun, which is obviously the shotgun. It's called the Nasher, which is the shotgun. Most of the single player game, you use your Lancer to fight most of the people. You do have the cover system and use your shotgun very occasionally. Whereas multiplayer, you predominantly use your shotgun and you drop the Lancer for one of the power weapons. And you're mostly fighting really up close with the shotgun. Because there's that disconnect between the single player's sort of gameplay and the multiplayer's gameplay, no matter how much someone plays through the story, it does not prepare them for playing the multiplayer. So you don't even get to learn how to play the game through playing the single player like you do, other games. If you play Call of Duty and you've never played a shooting game before, you can play the single player campaign and you'll know pretty much all the mechanics when you play online to shoot people. Obviously, there may be differences with when you dive and stuff. And things like that, but yeah, multiplayer, there is none of that in Gears of War. So I think that is the biggest thing that the Coalition needs to overcome for introducing new players to the game. They need to find a way to have a really robust tutorial for the mechanics of the multiplayer in order to try and keep people playing the game for long enough to where they learn the mechanics and start enjoying the game and feeling like they can be confident. So that for me is actually one of the biggest things to Gears of War surviving as a franchise. So even if they do something where they play their first 20 matches against bots, or you have someone in the Gears of War community or a few people in the Gears of War community, work out some tutorials and stuff like that, and you put them in the game. of wall bouncing and how to play, multiplayer, teaching people the importance of the power weapons and things like that. Especially having it in game helps a lot versus through YouTube, because people may not even, if you're not enjoying, let's say someone doesn't even enjoy single player games, they just try Gears of War for the first time in the multiplayer, and they don't even know, that the power weapons are important, for example, and they don't even get to the point where they know because they just get killed running into battle. They're probably not even going to search for the YouTube video anyway. They're just going to chuck the game away. I didn't pay anything for the game because it's through Game Pass, so it's essentially that makes them feel like it's free. So, they may never come back. So that's definitely something that they need to do. Skill-based matchmaking is not the answer, and I will go through that later on as to why that is. So yeah, that's the second point. I know I probably banged on about that for a little bit longer than I should, but hopefully that makes sense. So yeah. The second thing is, the multiplayer maps. I quite liked all the multiplayer maps from Gears of War 5, to be honest. There was none, apart from Bunker. I did not like Bunker. But apart from that, most of the other maps were really enjoyable. So, one of the things I'd like is more maps that have 2 snipers. I think having 2 sniper rifles, being a sniper myself, obviously, this may be slightly biased, but having more maps that have 2 snipers add different dynamics to the game. You have the mini battle of sniper versus sniper. Who's going to win that battle? It's normally me, like 99.9% of the time. But it adds a different dynamic to the way the maps play versus only having one. And the ones that have one have different dynamics because it's both teams fighting over it. So but I think natively, I think only Vazcar in Gears of War 5 had 2 snipers on the map. And then a lot of the other maps that had 2 on were like the remasters, so canals, not reclaimed, but there was another one where you got the cathedral on the left hand. Well, it depended on what side you spawn. You got Boomshot on one side, then 2 maps with sniper just after where you spawn. I'm sure the Gears of War players will know, but anyway. So yeah, that would be something that I'd be interested to see, because like I said, there was only one on Gears 5. In terms of how I'd like the game to play, and I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I genuinely feel, and I know I said this before, Gears of War 5 is the best multiplayer that Gears of War's ever had, apart from Gears of War 1. If I had to rank the games, it'd be how good that would be: Gears of War 1, Gears of War 5, Gears of War 3, Gears of War 4, Gears of War 2, and then Judgment. 2 was my least favourite of all of them, and it's funny though, because that's a lot of people's first entrance into the Gears of War franchise, and that was their favourite game. So it's this interesting thing that. So if I wanted the game to release tomorrow, and I could choose how the mechanics of the game felt, I'd want it to be some amalgamation of Gears of War 5 and Gears of War 1, and that'd be the perfect Gears of War game. But if it was very similar to how 5's played, I would not be upset. Another thing that I would like, being a mostly console player, one thing that I thought the finals did amazingly, they did it amazingly in the beta, but when the game actually come out, they didn't do this, is having crossplay, having it off by default. So you actually have to opt into crossplay. The reason being, especially on a game like Gears of War with all the wall bouncing and stuff like that, if you're playing on control and you're playing against people on mouse and keyboard, you have an obscenely horrendous disadvantage, even more so than in all the other games, because of how quickly they can move side to side and stuff like that. And I don't want to be forced to play against those people. And I know you can turn off crossplay in the Xbox settings, but it's so fiddly and stuff like that. And when you go into most games after you turn crossplay from the Xbox settings, like system settings, some games they actually don't even allow you to search for multiplayer until you put it back on, and stuff like that. So I'd really love it to be off by default, and you have to turn it on if you want to play with people on PC, because that way, console players are only going to have play with console players, not going to have to deal with that. But the players that wouldn't even know or be aware that how much of a disadvantage they're going to be at, they're not even going to have to deal with it. and it's going to be off by default. So I actually think that's a very important point that I wish more games did that are crossplay. And the final one is skill-based matchmaking. This one's super important, right? So I mentioned at the very start of this podcast, Call of Duty, they could come out with the best version of Call of Duty anyone's ever seen. The highest quality, the most fun and incredible multiplayer, the best multiplayer maps, not just in Call of Duty's history, but in any game's history, right? But if the game has skill-based matchmaking, it's not fun. And it has nothing to do with stomping on lesser players, because that's not fun either. It'd be like beating a team of 5-year-olds at 11-a-side football, then going and screaming, "Yeah, we won!" It's just like, no, you don't get any enjoyment you don't get like positive feelings from doing that. So it has nothing to do with wanting to stomp on lesser players. What it has to do with is the game being fun, which is what games are designed to be. Now, when I play Call of Duty, I have to play like I'm in a £1 million tournament just to compete with the level of players that I'm playing against. And it's not fun to have to do that all the time. That is literally what ranked is for. Casual is casual and should not have any skill base to it. And ranked is ranked. I've enjoyed playing X Defiant so much, because sometimes you come against really good six tacks. Sometimes you'll come against a team that's better than your team. Sometimes you'll come against a team that's worse than your team. Do you know what I mean? And it's not about having easy matches or killing people. It's just about the game being fun and having diversity of gameplay. You know, and I'm going to go back to Call of Duty, even though this is Gears of War. I'll get to the Gears of War in a second. But, you know, the lobbies that I'm playing in, I'm you know, without sounding, you know, arrogant, I'm in the top percentage of gamers, right? And I don't really try hard as much as I could, like, because I enjoy streaming and having a laugh. But you know, if I did try hard, I'd be a lot better. But like, you know, when you're playing in my lobbies that you have to on Call of Duty, if you're not using the meta weapons, right? If you're not jumping around every corner, if you're not hitting like 80% headshots minimum, you're not winning your battles. So you have to be on it every single minute of every single game you play. And that is not a fun experience. Imagine if you loved running, but instead of just going out and running, you had someone behind you timing you, that you had to do 10k in a freaking Olympic 10k pace. You would not enjoy running. You'd probably just go, nope, I'm not going to do it anymore. And that's exactly my worry. And in fact, my biggest worry with Xbox buying Activision was now Xbox owning the Activision skill-based matchmaking thing that's implemented in Call of Duty. I know it's engagement optimized matchmaking, but still, you know, I'm going to call it skill-based because that's something that everyone knows. And my biggest worry that they were going to implement that into other games, because, you know, this new Gears of War could be the best Gears of War that there's ever been. But if I'm forced in the casual game mode, right, to play against some combination of the top 500 other best players in the world on Gears of War, it's not going to be a fun experience, and it's going to be... I'm going to end up pulling my hair out after, you know, 5 games. It's going to be like I'm a professional gamer again, and, you know, having to be at 100% every single game I freaking play. You know, and it's impossible. Similar to, you know, the Call of Duty thing. It's like, if you have to be on it, you have to hit all your headshots, you have to, you know, use the meta weapons, otherwise you're not going to compete. Call of Duty Gears of War, it's almost even more important because you've got all the mechanics on top of that. You know, and it's just not, it's not a fun experience to have to deal with skill-based matchmaking. You know, as I said, if I have to play with some combination of the top 500 players in the casual game mode, not ranked, but the casual game mode, I probably won't end up playing Gears of War that much. And it is my most favourite franchise in the history of gaming. And it's the game that literally I would ask to play if I was on terminally ill, just so I could get my hands on it before I pop my clogs. Again, touch wood. And even so, still, that's how off-putting skill-based matchmaking is. You know, back in the day, it didn't matter how good, how bad you were. You'd play the game, you'd come against better players sometimes, worse players sometimes, and you'd learn. You know, it's a horrendous thing to put in a casual playlist. And I'm emphasizing the words because ranked is ranked. Have your skill based in that. That's literally what ranked is for, and you get something for it. Casual's casual. And I will literally die on that freaking box. So So the thing that I would like above that is no skill based matchmaking in casuals, because it would ruin the experience for a lot of people, and essentially everyone, because it stops the lesser players learning and finding out how to be better. You come across better people, you see, oh, they did this, and you sort of learn, as we did back in the day. So yeah, that is a kind of basic. It's a very basic look. I mean, it's gone on for about 40 minutes now, but it's a basic look at what I would be looking for from Gears of War E-Day, and it's kind of a top-down view, if you will, because I'm not going into specific mechanics I'd like to see, specific characters I'd like to see, the specific places I'd like to see in the Gears of War lore, the tone and all of this other stuff. It's just a general overview of the direction I'd love Gears of War 6 to take. If anyone from Coalition listens to this, I would very much like to be involved in play test behind the scenes. I will sign all the NDAs you like, and never mention it to anyone, because I love this game. It's a massive passion of mine, and it's got me back to make this podcast, something which I don't necessarily have the time to do, but I just love it. I love the game, so yeah, anything that I can contribute to the game would be amazing. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. My voice isn't necessarily the easiest one to listen to for a long period of time, because I am pretty monotone. So if you made it this far, you are a legend. And yeah, could you, in the comments below, wherever you are watching this, because it's probably going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, wherever you are watching this, can you comment below what you thought of the Xbox showcase if you watched it, and what your sort of favorite games you're looking forward to from it, and B, if you are a Gears of War player, what you are looking for from Gears of War E-Day. And if you agree with any of my points, let me know. If you disagree with my points, let me know. I'm not too sensitive. I think a lot of what we're missing in life at the moment is people being able to have serious debate, or not serious debate, sorry, fun debates, or have differing opinions without it, descending into a slagging match. Just oh, that's interesting. I mean, I disagree with you, but it's interesting, or I understand why you think that. It seems like as humans, maybe because of Facebook and people being faceless on the other side of the keyboard or something, but we've kind of lost that. So if I can contribute to getting that back in whatever capacity, that'd be great. So yeah, comment below A, what you thought of the Xbox showcase, B, your favorite game or most looking forward to game from showcase, and C, if you're looking forward to Gears of War E-Day, what you want from it, and if you agree with any of my points below. So I appreciate it. Hopefully I will see you in the next one. Please follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/sheepfragger. The links will be in the description below. I'll probably post this on my podcast specific YouTube, so my actual main YouTube will be in the description below as well, so please follow that. And also White Saber, who I've mentioned a couple of times in this podcast, will be in the description below as well. twitch.tv/White Saber. It's White 5 Abre. So yeah, I will speak to you all soon, and hopefully I will see you in stream. Peace.